Look, before we get started in week 2, I wanted to direct your attention again. Y'all saw the funny little video we played for you, but I'm going to tell you something. The power is in your hands with this series. If I don't get some questions in, then I don't get nothing to work with. So for the next 2 weeks, you get the opportunity to fill out questions and submit them. They are all submitted anonymously, meaning I do not know. You can ask whatever you want to ask, and it's not going to be like I'm pointing a finger at you or anything like you're asking a stupid question, because I know how we can feel sometimes. So you have 3 ways that you can submit questions. First of all, you can fill out the card on your seat. They were supposed to come back with a matte on the side, but they came back glossy. So hopefully you have a pen that can take the glossiness of this side of the postcard. But you can write it right here, and we have a box. We make things easy here. We have a box that has the same design on it at the connections table. You can slip it in there. You don't have to put your name on it or anything. Just write the question. You can also text your question to 504-608-2479. You're like, whoa, that's a long number. It's the number that texts you from our churching software that you get sometimes. You can text back your questions to there, or you can go to churchonthemission.org/questions. And you can submit your questions online. 3 different ways where you can submit questions, because trust me, I need questions to answer. So I need you guys to submit some questions. We all on the same page here? 2 more weeks to do that, and that's going to be a fun series. Now let's get back to work. I hope you came ready to work today. Did you know that you needed your work boots on for this sermon today? This is going to be a call to action type sermon. If you got your Bibles, you can open right back where we were, Joshua chapter 10. We're sticking in the same spot, the same story we're going to be pulling from. And last week we started our journey on getting unstuck. Look at your neighbor and ask him, have you gotten unstuck? Have you gotten unstuck? Because some of us feel complacent, some of us feel confused, and we feel like we can't move forward. But I believe that God is now illuminating the divine destiny inside of you. That's the whole purpose of this series. And we're doing that by digging into our church's 3 vision statements. And I kind of told you what they were last week. These are our 3 statements right here, that every time our church is looking forward to the future, that this is the things that we lay as our foundation. Number 1, always pray in sun stand still prayers. We talked about that last week. That's believing God for the impossible. That we're going to pray. We still pray and we have small prayers, but you're going to think of that impossible thing, and you're going to realize that you serve a God who makes impossible things possible. That you can ask God to do big things in your life and watch him go to work. Number 2, always in action. That's this week, and then next week, always dream bigger. If you're a dreamer, you're going to love next week's sermon as well. And I hope that you've already begun in your life since last week to ask God to do the impossible in your life. I don't care if you're 25 years old like me, or if you're 65 years old, or you're 75 years old. As long as you're still breathing and you got 2 lungs that are still working, guess what? God's not done with you yet. He's still got some stuff in store for you. And this week, as we jump into this next vision statement, I'm sticking here in the same story. I'm going to read it again. Some of you may not have been here last week, and you can check out sermon out on our website. But we're going to pull it from Joshua chapter 10, and hopefully you remember what's happening here. Joshua made an alliance that he wasn't supposed to make, right? He talked to the city of Gibeon, and he became friends with them. And now 5 armies are coming up to attack Gibeon, and Gibeon's hollering at Joshua and the Israelites to come and help them out. And they're in a pickle. So now Joshua's having to fight a battle that he wasn't supposed to even fight in the first place, because we do that sometimes in life. We fight battles we shouldn't even be fighting, and that's what's happening right here. But remember, you serve a God who will turn your mistakes into a miracle, just like he did for Joshua right here. And we see Joshua going to help his friends and fight, and they noticed that they were whipping their tail, like the Israelites were kicking some butt on the battlefield. And the enemy was retreating. And because they were retreating, Joshua knew that if they retreated, they would have got to regroup, and they'd had to continue fighting. So Joshua does the most outrageous, most ridiculous thing, and he asked God to make the sun stand still. So check this story out. It says, so Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, his soldiers, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear them, for I've given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. Maybe somebody in here needs to hear this again, that God looks at all your battles in the past tense. He's already won it on the cross. That's why he said, in this world you will face trials and tribulations, but take heart, for God has overcome the world. I just said tribulations instead of tribulations. I'm talking too fast. I'm trying to rap up here, but I'm not a white rapper, so I just can't do that. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal, and the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by way of Ascent of Beth-horon, and struck them as far as Ascalon and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel while they were going down the ascent of Beth-horon, the Lord threw these large hailstones from heaven on them as far as Ascalon, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. I'm always going to be on God's team. At that time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in a day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said the most outrageous, ridiculous thing that you could ever imagine. He literally asked God to make the sun stand still at Gibeon and moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? The sun is stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurt. It is set for a whole day. This has been no day like it before, since when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Don't you want to hear that about your life someday? That God said that surely God is fighting for my life. If you're taking notes, which I hope that you are, you can title this message our vision statement number 2, always in action. Always in action. How many of you have ever had aspirations to be a gym rat? To get in the gym, get healthy, to have guns like me. Have you ever felt that way before? Like you just want to get into the gym and be healthy, and you want to be that person that goes 3 or 5 times a week, and people are looking at you and you're showing them your diet plan and everything. But the reality is you're still stuck at home eating potato chips and watching your favorite Netflix show. How many of you, I have aspirations all the time. I mean, if I would have really been doing it right now, I'd probably be like really ripped up here. But that's not the equation. That's not what's happening right here, because it's just an aspiration. You see, I think the same way, if you want to be healthy physically, you've got to make steps. You've got to be what? Active. You've got to be active. I mean, when I was playing sports and stuff, I was easy. I could stay active. One time, no lie, my wife saw a picture. I think I said this last week, but my wife saw a picture of me from high school, and she saw when I played basketball, and she looked at it, and she was like, dang, I wish you had muscles like that still. I was like, wow, girl, like, what's up? And so we have you staying active means you can stay healthy. If you're getting in the gym, you're hitting the weight room, maybe you're the person over there that's hollering. At Planet Fitness, I used to go to Planet Fitness because nobody would judge me because I'm small, you see. And if you go to those other gym places where they got guys that are on steroids, they look at you like, what is this puny human in here right now? He is interrupting my gym time because, I take all their weights off the rack to put one little thing on there, and then they have to re-put everything. It's hilarious. But at Planet Fitness, they have what they call like a hunk alarm. So if you go too heavy with it, this alarm starts going, and I love it, because that means you can't go up there with all these big guys and just start throwing weights around. It's like a judgment-free zone. But staying healthy, you're getting active, staying in that place. When you get to do those things, you stay active, you stay healthy, then guess what? You're going to benefit from that. If you're eating, I know it's really hard to eat healthy down in South Louisiana because the food is so delicious everywhere, but can I tell you, if you get the right diet going and you get into the gym and stuff like that, instead of aspirations, and you become active, guess what? You're going to benefit the results from it. And I'm not saying your results are going to come within a month. Some of us have aspirations for a month, and then we quit when we don't see results, right? But if you stick with it, I know people sometimes took them a year, took them 2 years before they had that thing. It's the same way spiritually, because many of us, we become unhealthy spiritually, and we get complacent, we get stagnant in life because our faith isn't active. We have faith on Sundays, but our Monday to Saturday is completely different. There are some people maybe in here today that if your friend who sees you at work all the time saw you at church, they would see two completely different people. See, are you active in your faith day to day? Are you active in your faith? That's always in action. And God showed me something when I was, a few years ago, when I was studying this passage and I was pulling some of these, trying to come up with vision statements, because you always want to come up with these cool things for your church, and make them like catchy. That's why I was like, I like these three phrases, but we got this phrase around here called our city, our mission, and it's like things you want to come up with. But there was this point where when I was trying to come up with all of this, where I saw this, and God revealed something to me. Pull up that prayer again, Tori. I want to see this prayer. I want to show you this because, see, we've kind of heard the backstory, and you kind of know what's going on by now. You know what's happening in this story, and you know right here you have Joshua praying an outrageous, ridiculous prayer, asking God to literally press pause on the DVR, to make the sun stand still. He says, at the time Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of them, sun stand still. So he prays a prayer. Keep it right here for a second. Now, I want to show you a timeline because things happen right here. There's a progress of events that are happening. Step one, Joshua is standing in front of this huge group of people, the Israelites army, and he's saying this out loud. That's step one. That's what's happening in this very first sentence before we get to the quote. It says, at that time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over, and he's standing before them in all the sight of Israel. Step number two. So he's standing in front. He's opening his mouth. Step number two, he says the impossible prayer. Catch that. And then he says, sun stand still at Gibeon and moon in the valley of Ahalan. So here we see step two. He's praying for God for the impossible. He's believing God. Big faith-filled prayer. And check out what happens in step three. Can you bring up the next part for me? And it says, and I want you to leave this up for a little while because I'm going to be explaining some things. We're doing math today. Can you know that you can do math with words? And the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Now, step three. There are two things that are happening right here simultaneously. Two things. One, we see God working the miracle. He's making the sun stand still in the midst of where he's at. Sun standing still. On the other hand, something else is happening. Did you read that last line? We need to read it again so you catch it. I don't know if you caught it yet. It says, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. All right? Catch this. There's two things to this. Because it was a revelation for me that a lot of times God is working the miracle in your life. But did you know that Joshua still had to fight the battle even though the prayer was being answered? Are you catching that right now? You need to catch that right now because many people will pray these big faith-filled prayers and believe God for the impossible, but the next thing you do is get back on the couch, sit down, and start eating some potato chips. And God's working the miracle right in front of you. He's doing incredible things right there for you. But you're still staying complacent. You're still staying stuck where you're at. Even though God made the sun stand still, Joshua, he still had to fight the battle. I think many people get it all wrong a lot of times. That we think if we pray to God, then we can sit and wait on him to do what he's got to do. But there's an equation here. There's a step three of two things that are happening simultaneously. The sun stood still, the moon stopped. That's your God working a miracle. And then you have Joshua fighting the battle. You see, I want you to visualize this because, see, if Joshua, what happens if you just believe God for the impossible in your life, and you don't start to fight the battle, guess what? You're in the same place you were when God was working the miracle. And to me, that doesn't look like I'm moving forward too much. And this series is all about moving forward. See, God wants to work the miracle in your life, but the question is, are you willing to walk back into battle into the victory that God's given you when he's working the miracle? It's a question there. And there's a hint there, and there's something happening. You see, James illustrates this perfectly in his book. James chapter 2, verse 17, he says, so also faith by itself, if it does not have works, it's dead. I want you to catch. So faith by itself, if it doesn't have what? Works, it's dead. We see two things that have to work simultaneously with one another. Faith and good works. Can you bring up that passage again for me? 12, the 13, the verse. So what you're seeing right here is you see the sun stood still and the moon stopped. That's your faith. And then you see until the nation took vengeance on their enemies, the works. Faith by itself is dead, but faith accompanied by good works is what we're looking for. Now, we all know what faith is, right? Many of you know what faith is. It's believing in something even though you're not seeing it. I mean, the Hebrews writer tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. But what is works? What is works? What is this word that is popping up right here? What is James talking about when he says works? Well, if you take the New Testament and you break it down to the original meaning, did you know that KJV version, NIV, ESV, they were all derived from, if you break down the New Testament, from a Greek version called the Septuagint. And the Septuagint is your Greek version, so if you want to get the actual meaning of a word, sometimes you've got to break it down to its original meaning. If you break this one down to your original meaning, this word is ergon. Look at your neighbor and say, ergon. Ergon. Guys, I just helped you out a lot. Trust me, your lady might like it if you walk through the door and say, I've been at ergon all day today for you, baby. I'm telling you, you just learned a Greek word about works right there. But you know what this word means? This word ergon, it means an act. If you break it down, it means an act. It means a deed. It means something done. See, James right here, some theologians, you start reading some stuff up on this, and they're thinking that James and Paul are trying to contradict themselves because they're talking about salvation, and you don't need works for salvation. You're justified by faith. But James isn't talking about that. James isn't talking about doing good work to work yourself to heaven. What he's talking about is that when you have faith in your life and you have an act of faith, then naturally good works should spill out from it. If you're someone who is a believer and you love the Lord, then you should be the same person Monday through Saturday that you are on Sunday at church. You are active in your faith and you're someone who's praying. You got a constant communication with the Lord. That you're using the gifts, the talents he's got for you. You're doing something. You're helping someone in need when you see someone in need. You're sharing your testimony with someone that needs to hear maybe some encouragement. Or maybe you're inviting people to church and getting them there because did you know that God strategically placed you where you are in life to affect those around you with the light of the gospel? Your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, those people, they're around you, and God placed you specifically where you are to pursue his mission and touch those people. Are you doing those things? Are you having an active kind of faith? Because the thing is, as we believe God for the impossible, we've got to back it up with our faith. We've got to back it up with our faith in the way that we all. You ever heard the phrase one time, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? I've thought about that phrase with this, is that a lot of us, we can talk the talk, but can we truly walk the walk? We can tell people all the time that we love the Lord and we do this, but Jesus said you'll know them by their fruits. Are you peaceful? Are you loving? Are you look at someone at you? Are you play this hate card on people? Or those are the kind of traits coming out of you, then you need to really look at your faith and see where your faith is being derived from. Do you not only talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? And I think for some of us the question is that today. Last week I hit this term, guiltiness and mistakes that can sometimes be a barrier in your life from moving forward because you feel like you're not worthy to move forward because of the mistakes you made. But I told you last week that God will turn your mistake into a miracle if you're willing to trust him and keep moving forward. But this week we're tackling another term, and it's something that I think we can all attest that we've dealt with at some point, and it starts with an L and it ends with a nis, and it's called laziness. I've seen some of you women in the house just elbow your husband by you. It's called laziness right there. You know, I think about it like this, a hypothetical situation for you. And I'm going to relate all of this, and I'm going to get you. You're going to get something from this, because this was a huge revelation for me. You know, maybe you lost a job and you're unemployed at the moment. Hypothetically. You're unemployed, and you're like, man, I've been hearing this preacher talk about how I need to believe God for big things. So I need a job. So I'm going to pray that God, it seems like an impossible thing for me sometimes. I need a job. I need the right job. I need this amount of pay so I can survive. I need this to happen. I need these kind of benefits. So you start praying. You pray this big prayer, and then you pull up your computer and you go typing away. You're putting in your application. You put one application in, you put two applications in, and then you close the computer, you sit back on your couch in your boxers and your wife beater with your potato chips on the side, and you pull the phone up next to you and like, any moment now somebody's going to call me because God's going to do the impossible. Any moment now it's going to happen. Any moment, and you wait and you wait and you wait. And you know, guys, I do believe God can, boom, it can happen like that. I do believe that. But I also believe that God doesn't bless lazy. And the kind of person that I am is a person that's determined. And it's a person that doesn't work from a laziness standpoint. See, when I think about a story like that, I ask from the standpoint, okay, you need God to do that in your life? Well, you pray that God would guide you on your journey as you get your best suit and tie on, you get your resume together, and you go walk into some stores, you meet some people, you let them show how much you care, how much you can be a good person, how you could be good to work with. You go and put some action behind what you're praying. You get what I'm saying right there? Instead of just believing God to do something, you need to put some up into it, get the lead out your butt, and keep moving forward. Yeah. Is that hitting with somebody? The laziness, though, because God don't bless lazy. And some of you are here today. I want you to keep thinking about that impossible thing. Last week we did that. That impossible thing in your life. Some of you are like, you're praying for a job promotion. I just want that job promotion so bad. But you done showed up to work late 3 out of 5 times this week. That you're constantly sitting in the back criticizing the leadership in your boss, that you're sitting over there dishonoring, and you're showing up to work late, and then you're messing up on the little things, and you think you're giving God much to work with to be able to get that miracle? Or maybe you're trying to get out of debt. You have aspirations to get out of debt. I want all my debt gone. But what you're doing is you're waiting for someone to walk up and magically write you a check for $100,000. And swipe it to you. That's the miracle you say. Instead of making the steps, maybe taking the Dave Ramsey course, getting some wisdom to figure out how you can get out of debt and watch God bless that. I mean, there's so many different scenarios. I mean, you want to open up a business? You keep dreaming about opening up this business. Well, if you want to do it that bad, go to the clerk of court, file the paperwork, start working at it. And maybe you say, well, I don't have the resources right now. I don't have these things. No. God's already given you something in your hand. Are you willing to work what's in your hand so that God can give you more? If he can trust you with a little, then he can trust you with more. You keep to move forward. Now, see, I'm trying to get to a point that laziness, God doesn't bless laziness. A lot of us work hard. I get that. We do things. One thing right now is I heard this pastor one time. And I'm about to speak directly to the men in the house. I heard this pastor say one time that I believe that men are going to bed with too much energy. You believe that? I believe men a lot of times are going to bed with too much energy. Because as men, sometimes we work all day for our family. We work this job and we're exhausted when we get home. So you know what we do? We go home and we sit down on the couch and we're like, I deserve this time to sit here and watch my shows. I deserve. Your wife's over there cleaning up. She's picking up the dishes. She's playing with the kids. She's working with the kids. But you're over there taking your time, looking through TV, doing your own thing, worried about your own thing because you're saying, I deserve it. I'm there anyways. I've worked all day. But you know, as a godly man, you not only provide for your family, but you lead your family. And I believe godly men, when you get home and when you lay your head on the bed, you should be so exhausted from the day, not from work, but because when you got home from work, you looked at your wife and you said, how can I serve you today? Do I need to help you out a little bit, do this? Do I need to and play with your kids? Man, some of you have kids that are in the most crucial stages of their life where you need to build a relationship. Man, that phone, it doesn't matter. I got an iPad, but too many of us are sitting there. We're so lazy looking at social media all day instead of spending time with the kids that that are right there. We need to put the phones down. Guys in the house, you need to get to work at your house. Stop thinking that you deserve the world and work for the wife that you have. You should get to, when you lay in your head in bed at night, you should be so drained from leading your family. And God's going to give you the strength to keep moving forward. It's those things. We're getting the laziness out of our life because God doesn't bless laziness. Matter of fact, Proverbs 13:4 says this: the soul of a lazy man desires and has nothing, but the soul of a diligent shall be made rich. Because someone who has aspirations will only have that, aspirations to do something. But it's the ones who take a step forward, keep working what you have in your hand and moving forward, that God begins to bless. I even had it when we first started our church. I mean, this same exact kind of scenario that I was explaining. We had quite a few people that helped join our church that were moving from Missouri, from South Carolina, all over the place to help. So there's about 10 or 12 of us that were here helping to start the church. And obviously when they got here, they had to get jobs. Well, there was this one guy in particular, not going to say his name, but he wasn't getting a job. He'd been here for like 3 weeks, and he hadn't had any calls, he hadn't anything. So I went and talked to him. I was like, hey, man, maybe I can help you out with, how many applications you put in? 2? 3 weeks? Have you been anywhere yet and checked out? No? Been here 3 weeks? How'd you fill out your applications? Online? So you filled out, did you call them and let them know? No? So you expect to get a job just sitting here on your butt? And God's just going to hand it to you? If he can't even trust you with working a little bit? And I was baffled at the fact that 2 weeks later he ended up moving back because he couldn't even find a job, but he was just too lazy to really get out there. Matter of fact, I was like, well, I know some other places they are hiring. They could probably get you on right away. No, I don't want to do that. Don't want to do that? Man, if God's moved you to a place to work in his purpose, sometimes you're going to have to do things you might not want to do, but it's only going to set you up for a better success in the future. If you got to flip burgers for a little while, maybe you got to flip burgers to get where you need to go. See, it's the people who are diligent, people who are serving, who are going forward. Man, that's the people who begin to see the real work happening in their life, and you begin to see yourself going forward. Could you imagine if Joshua and the Israelites would have sat down on the sidelines while the sun was standing still? This story would have turned out a lot differently. Maybe it would have been a few more chapters of fighting because they decided to not fight on the day that God was working the miracle. And the way I see it is that, guess what? When God's working the miracle, that means it's time to walk into victory. Because what's happening in this fight is Joshua and them, they're about to wipe them out. They're about to win. And maybe that's what God needs you to do, is he's working a miracle, but you haven't walked into the victory that he's already given you because you're too lazy. You're just sitting down and not moving forward. It's about activating your faith. Activating your faith. I'm going to share in a second about how this is a call to action for our church. But specifically, right now, I told you can use these 3 statements to apply them to your life, your own life. That you could be a person that's always in action. And not in a way to where you're like not taking a Sabbath and not resting at times. I'm not talking about that. I'm bad about that. I'm like an Energizer bunny sometimes. I just don't stop. I need to stop sometimes. You need to stop. You need to rest at times. But there are these times where you need to look at your life and say, am I always in action with my faith? Am I reading my word? Am I trying to get closer in my relationship with the Lord? God says, draw near to him and he'll draw near to you. Am I getting involved in a local church? Because did you know that you can use your gifts that God's giving? Matter of fact, the Bible says that each person has a gift. Whether that's welcoming people, whether that's singing on stage or playing an instrument, whether that's back here working the production area, whatever it is, each person has a gift, and you can use that gift to further God's kingdom. Are you activating your faith that way? Are you activating your faith by leading your family? Are you activating your faith by showing the fruits of the Spirit? Peace and love and joy and selflessness in your family. Are you leading your family? What does your faith look like on a day-to-day basis? You see, you're believing God for the impossible. You're believing for that job promotion right now. Stop showing up to work late. Start being the most faithful, most loyal employee they have. You get there on time. 15 minutes early is on time. You get there on time. Stop criticizing the leadership and start honoring the leadership that's above you. And you see a whole difference. I'm not talking about kissing butt. I'm talking about honor. I'm talking about giving. We should give every person honor. Matter of fact, the true test of honor is if you can honor someone in their heart when they don't deserve it by their actions. And honor that leadership. Be that's change that you want to see. Be that. You want to see that job promotion. You do those things. You want to open that business. Pray God to do the miracle. But then you start walking in his guidance. And it's not letting laziness hold you in a place where you're complacent, where you're stuck, and where you feel like you're not moving forward. I need 3 volunteers. I need 3 volunteers. 1 person right here. You can come real quick. 2 other. Come on, Rocky. Come on. Jordan, you coming up? Cool. Rocky, you stand right there. You stay right there. Now, I want you to grab you a chair and you sit down in a chair. You stand right here by him. Grab you a chair. This is good stuff right here. I like to have fun in church. And I thought about this in my head, so I pray that this goes as good as it did in my head as it's about to go. So, you stand right next to him. And, yeah, right next to him. All right, right now what we have to do, this is Jordan. This is Big John, Rocky. But everybody's Jordan right now, okay? We all in the same picture, all right? What I want you to do, Rocky, you're Jordan, so you can't be looking at yourself right now. You got to look this way, all right? Good, perfect. Hey, you're catching it. He's figuring it out. So I want you, everybody's Jordan right now. I want you to catch this because this is be a visual that might help some of you right now. You see, Jordan had a stage where he wanted to believe God for the impossible, but this is what he did. You see, I want you to think about it as a timeline. This is where Jordan wants to be, that person that has seen God do the miracle in his life and is moving forward. This is where he aspires to be. This is where he is now. And a lot of times, look forward to it. A lot of times what happens is we dream about how we can become that without ever getting up off of this chair. We dream about how we can get there someday, but it intimidates us because it seems so big. And that's what we talked about last week, like praying sun stand still prayers, but it seems so big. And so, or maybe we're just so exhausted because we've lost so many. We feel like we lose all the time and feel like nothing goes our way. And so we feel like we have the right to sit down like that. But I'm going to show you something. You see, what happens is each time, think about that impossible thing in your life right now. I'm going to keep using my same examples to illustrate this. But that job promotion, that maybe it's marriage. Your marriage is falling apart. And you're like, I don't know what to do. It's going to end in divorce. It doesn't have that way. You can pray God to do an incredible work in your marriage and restore it. And you know what? You take the first step by being honoring. That's 1 step up. I've learned how to honor my wife I've learned how to honor my husband instead of trying to get something from them. I've learned one thing right there. Or maybe that job promotion. I started showing up to work early. That's another step forward. I'm taking one little step at a time. One little step at a time that's going to keep getting me forward. Maybe it's another thing. You want to open that business. You filed your paperwork so you can start becoming. That's what we had to do when we wanted to become a nonprofit. We had to go to the clerk of court. We had to do that thing. I took another step forward. Okay, this is going to get good for you in a second. Maybe you had this health issue and you're like, man, I need to get my weight under control, but you've never even been to the gym. Guess what? You started going to the gym. You started a membership at Planet Fitness. You could take a step up. You're getting a little bit more. You're getting closer and closer to that person that you deserve to be. Your marriage is coming together. Now you've learned how to communicate. You've learned how to honor your wife, your husband. Now you learn how to communicate. You can take us another step forward. You're keeping the success. And I can't believe I just said that. I said success. I said success. I know I just said marriage and sex, but I meant success, okay? I ran out of breath right here. You guys are dirty. You are dirty. Every one of you. I'm the innocent one right now. I'm the innocent one. Gosh, man, this church, I got to pray for this church. Lord have mercy. And Jordan, he starts going he shows up to work on time. And for the first time ever, he walks into the office and he tells his boss, hey, you're doing a great job. I just want you to let you know that. He took another step forward. He's understanding things. Things are starting to happen. It's coming together, and he's becoming something he thought he would never become because he's starting to believe God for the impossible. And on top of all this, now he's reading his word daily. He's praying to God. He's taking another step forward. Guess what? He's being a man of God. He's getting his family to church every Sunday. He's bringing them to church so that they can come take another step forward. He's becoming that person. He's seeing God moving all these pieces. A few months ago, Jordan thought his life was in ruins. Everything was everywhere. He was looking to get success. He was looking to get this way, but he couldn't because it just felt like it was everywhere. But it was one small step at a time. One small step at a time. One small step at a time. No. Let me catch you. See, a lot of us think we can do this. We think we can just start here and immediately be here. Like immediately that happens. And there's times that, God may do something incredible in your life. He might write you that $100,000 check. However you did it, please tell me. I'd love to know. But sometimes I haven't seen that. But you know what I have seen? I've seen God honor the little steps. I've seen God put favor in my life over the little steps. I've seen him work the impossible because of the little steps that I made. And then when I got to this point, you see, now you're in the battle. Remember Joshua prayed for the impossible. Can you bring that prayer up? Stay right here. You bring that prayer back up for me. He prayed for the impossible, but it says, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies, which means, guess what? Joshua isn't sitting down with the Israelites. He's moving forward into battle, and guess what happens in the middle sometimes? You get beat up a little bit. I'm not going to hit you or anything, man. Sometimes you get hit. Sometimes you take a sword to the back. Sometimes you feel like you can't quite get there. But the moments where you feel like you're down, you know what you need to do? You need to look over your shoulder and realize where you just came from and realize you're that much closer to getting where you need to go because God's not done with you yet. Amen? Y'all can be seated. Y'all can be seated. Activating your faith. Activating your faith. Always in action. Don't be someone different Monday through Saturday than you are on Sunday. The only person that you're hurting is yourself. You have unforgiveness. Maybe some of you right now, somebody's betrayed you, somebody's done something wrong. Trust me, that's happened in my life. And unforgiveness can be a thing that keeps you on that chair. Keep you right there sitting. And some of you, the biggest step forward that you can make right now before you can ever move forward, you need to forgive that person that hurt you. Because you don't realize that you think by not forgiving someone, you're keeping them in a prison, but the whole time you're only keeping yourself in a prison. Yeah. Keeping yourself down on a chair. Now I'm going to forgive that person. I'm going to take a step forward. And I've been angry and I feel like I've been mean to people my whole life. Maybe your step forward is to start encouraging one person a day. One person a day. Sending a text message maybe to someone. It's like everybody knows me to be the mean person. I have the weird resting face and nobody likes me really sometimes. You don't have to live by other people's opinions. Take a step forward. Be the encourager. Activate your faith and see what God begins to do by taking the small steps. You know, it's kind of a call to action for our church too. It's like, why do we have this statement as for our church? I mean, last week I told you that as a church we believe God for the impossible because as we pray sun stand still prayers, they will create sun stand still moments where people are saved, where people are baptized, where relationships are restored, addictions are broken. But that doesn't happen if we're not always in action. So when I'm talking about always in action as a church, remember the church is not an organization, the church is a people. It's each and every one of us. What I imagine by that is that number one is that we will never stop trying to reach people who are far from God. And the way that happens is not by me and Leah just doing our thing on Sundays. No, it takes every one of us inviting the people. Remember, God strategically placed you where you are with people that are around you that need to hear about Jesus, that are far from God. All it can take is a simple invite to church. Hey, come check out what God's doing in my life. Maybe he'll do something special in yours. always in action. So you know why we made a commitment that we would be consistent, that we would have things happening on Sundays. Soon we're going to be launching life groups, and when we launch life groups, that are things where you can continue growing in your relationship with God, with other people. So we're going to keep things, that's what you call church life. Things that are happening, a youth ministry that just launched, church that's happening on Sundays, a prayer service that's happening. All these opportunities that are always in action to reach more people. But also, the same way is we want to be a church that's always in action in our community. Serve in our community monthly, in some way, in some capacity, to where people know who we are because of not about what we do here, but because of what we do outside these walls, how we are outside these walls. And the truth is, guys, I've got to turn this to one section for us. The only way we can be a church that's actively outside these four walls is if we have the generosity to back it up. Right now, I can tell you guys, nobody on this church and in this church gets paid. We have bills to pay, $1,300 a week to exact. I'm an open book. I'll show you our budget papers. $1,300 a week that we have to make. If you came and sat with me right now, the last 2 or 3 months have been difficult for us. We've hit 900, 800. And guess what? When you're hitting those kinds of things, the money, you're not making your bills. We've made all our bills, but the savings account starts to go down. Always in action doesn't mean one of the most fundamental things that you can do as a Christian is be a tither. Be a tither. I know many of you in here that love your church, and you don't want nothing to happen. And I'm not saying this that something's happening to our church. I told you guys, if we ran out of money here, I'd go rent a white tent, and I'd be outside of the lake underneath a white tent. I ain't stopping. I ain't going to get lazy on you. But that doesn't give you an excuse not to see that your church needs you, that all of us have to come together to step in. I always prayed one day that our church would be so abundantly generous, have so much people that are generous that we can't help but flow generosity out of our church. You know, the cool thing is, too, our church in 2 years, we've given over $32,000 to missions. Even though we've had some of the hardest times in our church where we thought like we'd have to maybe not have service one week or something like that because our finances were that low, we never stopped giving 10% as a church every Sunday. Never missed one Sunday. But we have many new families in our church and many new things, and you're learning a lot of things, and one day maybe I'll take some time to really teach this. But when you start tithing, when you start giving, 2 things happen. Number 1, you make an impact. How do you make an impact? It's not you just giving to God, you're giving to God through the local church. And then we get to use that money to touch people, that people are getting saved. Do you know that 64 people are saved because of your generosity so far in this church? And that number is going to exceed. I believe that as you're generous, that one day you're going to go to heaven and there are going to be people in heaven that are by you saying, thank you so much for being generous when you were on earth. Because you gave that $1, I was able to hear about Jesus and be in heaven. That's how much generosity. It doesn't matter that I need your money. No, I don't need your money. If you're giving me your money out of obligation, don't give it to me. Don't give it to this church. If you want to make an impact, though, do it. 2 things happen. Number 1, you make an impact. Number 2, God blesses you. He always does more with a 90% than you could ever do with 100%. Math has never made sense in my life. When I was this one time, me and Leah, we were just married in this apartment and stuff. Our bills for the week was like $575 or $675, and she wasn't working, and I only made about $400 a month. That's literally. We ate hot dogs every day. I hate hot dogs now. But somehow our bills were paid every week because we tithed every week. We still believe God even though we didn't have it. I'm telling you this to tell you, church, God's not done with this church yet. And he needs the people to step up and say, hey, I'll be obedient in that, and watch him work through you in the same way. In the same way. And as we end today, I'll tell you one last thing about this laziness factor. You see, when we wanted to start our church, it didn't just happen. It takes a lot of money to make this kind of thing happen. And so whenever we found out it was like 90 grand would get us just started. And for me and Leah, 22, 23, it was like, how are we going to come up with 90 grand? We barely make 30 together by ourselves at the time. And so we were just like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're just going to get off our butts and we're going to do what we got to do. We found this organization called the Church Multiplication Network. They said they were willing to, if you could raise $45,000, they would match the $45,000. We went through a whole process to get approved by them, and we got approved by God's grace. They looked at me and realized I was never a pastor before, and that was a big thing, big obstacle, but I ended up, God's grace, he got us through it because he had a purpose for this church. And we got through it, and then it's like, okay, now we got to raise $45,000. I think I can do that. We started working, we started building a team, and our team started tithing early on, and we started seeing the finances, but even with 10 people, you know, in it, we had a year's time to make this happen. So we didn't just do the tithing. I would go preaching at different churches. They would do offerings for a church. I would constantly be writing up letters, reaching out to people I knew. We even did a wiffle ball tournament and had teams register in. We made a couple grand doing that. But you see, the whole point and then as the deadline was approaching, I was like, man, we're a couple thousand short. I don't know if we haven't quite got there, and we know we want to start our church then, and if we don't get our money by now, we're not going to be able to order all our equipment in time. And I was starting to worry, I was starting to panic, and I was like, man, I've been working my butt off. And I just started praying, God, I need you to do the impossible. You see that I'm working actively, I'm moving forward into this. God, do the impossible. I went to preach at a church. This is no lie. Went to preach at a church. I was getting ready to preach. This guy walks up to me. He slips me a check. He says, don't look at this until after service. I was like, yes, sir. Put it in my pocket, and I walked away, and I did my thing. I preached. I came back, went home. As I'm going home that day, I opened up the check, and I started to cry. This dude wrote a check for our church for $10,000, and it exceeded what we needed to have. See, God blesses the small steps as you move forward. And we went through that $90,000 pretty quick because it cost a lot of money to do all this, to make this happen. But God's not done with this church yet. God's not done with you yet, wherever you are right now, wherever you're at in your situation. It's time that you activate your faith. Maybe your active faith today is by just being the same person you are on Sundays every day of the week. Maybe it's praying and praying every day, getting to figure out how you can pray. Maybe it's encouraging someone. Maybe it's getting past unforgiveness in your heart. What is it right now that you think so impossible? What are the small steps that you can take forward to activate your faith? And you're telling me right now, like, well, job promotion, you keep talking about job promotion, but what does that have to do with faith and God and stuff? Well, let me tell you, let me back it up just so I can concrete this sermon home for you. The Bible says that anything you do with all your might, with all your soul for Jesus. So anything I'm going to put my hands to, I'm going to do 110% with it because I know God's destined it for it. Have the faith, activate your faith with everybody on their feet as we get ready to close.